Hey everyone, Robert here, author of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life. Are you ready to start living life to the fullest? Are you ready and willing to transform yourself and your life from ordinary to extraordinary? Welcome, my friends, to the Fully Engaged Life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. So today I'd like to take a look at diving a little deeper into the understanding of mindfulness as the foundation for meditation, or maybe more closely as the foundation for developing the capability of attaining no mind, which is the point of meditation, right? The complete and utter stillness, the silence of the mind. I find it interesting how when I've been working with students or clients that I'm told quite often how they can already do no mind. And they're a bit shocked when I tell them that what they currently believe to be no mind is actually not really what it is. This is often met with disbelief and resistance to what I'm saying because they've already formed a false belief around that they already know what it is and they're already capable of doing it. So it can be a little difficult at this point to get through to them. But allow me to break this down for you as I've done it for them, because I think this is important to understand. And it will give you some clarity as to the whole process and to why what you think it is may not be enough. It may not really be what is actually being spoken of. A lot of people, the uninitiated, right? When they use a certain word, it has a very superficial meaning. And when someone who has been initiated into a process, successful with a process, when they use a word, it means something entirely different. See, we each speak from our experiences. And this often results in a sense of disconnection or miscommunication between people because the initiated and the uninitiated are using the same words, but they mean something dramatically different. I know a lot of times students struggle to be on the same page, is the way they put it. And it's like, well, until you've attained these certain experiences, that's not possible. You can't possibly be on the same page until you've attained the same levels of experience. And then, absolutely, that will happen. And this is the value of having a teacher guide us. So anyway, I'm going to break this down for you, and I hope this helps. In order to attain no mind, we need to begin by attaining mindfulness. And by mindfulness, I mean the authentic practice of mindfulness, not all the stuff that any corporate sponsored person brings in, the little corporate wellness, mindfulness program. And all those things are great, and a lot of them have some value. But we have to understand that most of them are very, very, very loosely based on what real mindfulness actually is. And for the most part, many of these people who create these systems have no real authentic experience with the process of actual mindfulness. So I'm referring to the term mindfulness here in its authentic sense. Okay? So with that, because it comes from a religious system, it comes with dogma. Well, the dogma is not necessary. It's okay if that's what you want, but it's unnecessary. We don't need the dogma. But we do need the essential teachings and the practices because they are necessary for success. Real mindfulness is about working directly with the conscious and the unconscious processes of the mind. Our hope is to understand how the mind really works through guided practices that allow us to directly observe it for ourselves. Mindfulness allows us to dissolve many mental obstacles that the mind itself has unknowingly constructed, unknowingly to us, that end up standing in our way of awakening. A major aspect of this is to bring the unconscious mental processes and patterns into the conscious mind, where we can then observe them and then either change them through direct interaction with them or allow them to dissolve away. Okay, so let's break this down. If I look at an object, any object, okay, I have a small green bell on my desk that's attuned to the vibrational frequency of the heart. There it is. So I have this bell. When I look at the bell, my mind processes the sensory input, and I immediately form a feeling or an attitude about that little bell. We do this with every single thing we see, every situation in life, everything. We do this nonstop throughout every single day, either thousands or tens of thousands of times. See, what happens is I form a sort of feeling or attitude about the bell. And the feeling isn't necessarily an emotion. It's just sort of an attitude about it, right? It's kind of a feeling, but it's not necessarily a full-blown emotion. The feeling could be more likened to something like an opinion. Either I like the bell, I don't like the bell, or I just really don't care about the bell at all. Remember that threefold identification process. Something is either pleasant, unpleasant, or indifferent. It can be how we feel about it, and that feeling can be a physical sensation. It can be an emotional attachment, or it can be this feeling attitude type of opinion. So regardless, one of these three feelings will set the attitude I have towards interacting with the bell. For instance, if I have a good memory about ringing the bell and using it in a particular meditation or seminar that I gave, and everything went great and people got so much out of it, right? So that memory then shapes how I feel about the bell, in this case, positively. If I have a negative experience from the past with the bell, then I'll have an unpleasant feeling towards using it again. If it's new to me, or I haven't used it yet, or don't even understand it very much, I may have no past experience with it at all, so I may just feel indifferent about it. Maybe it's just that I don't even care about stuff like that. I think it's a bunch of hooey, so I'm indifferent about it, right? As I've clearly illustrated for you here, these feeling attitudes, these type of opinions, are based upon past experiences and emotional attachments. In other words, we like to believe we have free will, but in reality, free will is, for the most part, just an illusion. We're enslaved by our own conditioned minds. That's right. Most of what's going on in your mind has been conditioned. It's a program. And much of what we view as reality is merely a program. It's not truly how we feel about the bell in this case. It's more accurately how we've felt about the bell in the past. And we just keep mindlessly repeating this same process time after time after time in this endless cycle based upon the past. See, the problem is the conditioned mind. And the conditioned mind is another way to look at the ordinary mind. It's the mind that is still dominated by ego and the unconscious mental processes that support it. It's the unconscious mental attachments to thoughts, feelings, attitudes of past experiences, past teachings, things we were taught when we were children, experiences we had when we were little kids, things that we've read. And a lot of these things are now what we continue to use to form our perception of current reality, when those things are actually from the past and they have nothing to do with what's going on now. See, this is the process. This is what happens. This is how we end up shaping our view of reality. See, it's not reality as it is, but reality that we have created in our own minds. It's our own view of reality. And because it is oftentimes in direct conflict with actual reality, we end up having this state of fear and unhappiness. Now, how is it then that we came to have these feeling attitudes? Most people think that it's just how they feel about it, right? Or, well, it's my intuition. I'm using intuition here. It's just a feeling. It's just how I feel about it. But this isn't really accurate. It's not true at all. They fail to realize that these feeling attitudes, these types of opinions, are created from thought, which comes first, right? You don't initially have the feeling, but the process of the thought goes almost entirely unnoticed because they take place largely in the unconscious mind. So these thoughts are what create this feeling attitude, but we think it's just an instant feeling attitude. It's happening that quickly. These thoughts race through our mind, in the unconscious mind. We are completely unaware of it, and then all of a sudden we understand it as it ripples out into this type of feeling or opinion about it. In other words, we don't even realize, for the most part, that we are having these thoughts. And for those who kind of get it a little bit, they're aware of it to some degree, they usually ignore them because they're happening so quickly and right alongside most of the other incessant chatter that's going on in their head. As soon as our eyes look at an object, the unconscious mind goes to work, thinking and forming a detailed examination of the object, which then triggers the emotional attachments from the past. And then this forms the way that I feel, or my attitude, or my opinion about it. That's how this is born. And it's happening instantaneously, and it's happening to everyone all the time. But we consider this to just be normal, so we don't pay it any attention. And it stays hidden away in the unconscious mind, where it can do what it's been programmed to do, what it's been conditioned to do. Unless we become aware of the unconscious mental processes taking place, we fail to realize that these thoughts are even happening and activating the way that we feel about something. Mindfulness teaches us to stay engaged in observing and experiencing our mental processes, and that eventually leads to our ability to stay engaged in all areas of life, which is a truly beautiful thing. For people to put down the entertainment, to no longer succumb to the distractions, and to remain fully engaged in their life is what this show is about. This is how we do it. These are the things that have to be engaged. If you're not doing these things, then anything you're doing is merely superficial. And you are not actually, in a spiritual sense, in the terminology used by spiritual systems, actually living fully engaged. Think about it. How can we be fully engaged when we are enslaved by these unconscious mental processes that are based on past experiences? So we need to become free of this. So what does this have to do with meditation and no mind? Well, if we haven't yet managed to rid ourselves of these unconscious mental processes, then when we slow or even stop our conscious thoughts, the unconscious mind is still very active, which is not no mind. So while people believe they can stop thinking, in reality, they're still thinking thoughts that are hidden away in the unconscious mind because these processes haven't been brought to a sense of stillness yet. When people first attain the ability to slow down their thoughts or even stop the majority of their conscious thoughts, they immediately become elated because it feels like such a relief. And it is. It's a great step forward, and it is a tremendous sense of relief. But they get so excited. And when that happens, the impulse of the ego is to instantly form the belief that they have attained the full aspect of no mind, that they can now do it, they know what it is, and they love it. What they've achieved is incredible. It's just not no mind. But they cling to the false belief because they've already formed an emotional attachment to it and a feeling attitude along with it. This is a dangerous mental trap that can happen to the best of us. And I'm explaining all of this here to help you guys avoid that trap. It's just like when some people attain the level of meditation where they reach nirvana. Nirvana feels incredible. It's ecstatic. It's amazing. It's like nothing you felt. People feel this and they stay there. I know when I attained that point in my meditation, it wasn't easy to come out of that because it's so blissful. And it's very easy to mistake that level of achievement as awakening when indeed it is not. It's a wonderful achievement, not to be taken lightly, but it is not full awakening. In other words, there's more to come. It gets even better. So mindfulness is the necessary foundation that leads us to have the ability to attain no mind within our meditation, to reach a full point of stillness, of complete and utter silence, which is the aspect of that, right? And you don't try to attain no mind in meditation. You have to just let go and allow it to happen. And when the mind becomes still, the whole process is suspended. All mental processes, conscious mental processes, unconscious mental processes, are suspended. Okay? They're suspended. They're put on hold. They're paused. And this opens you up to no mind. We have to have the ability to do this. Conscious thought alone is not enough. We have to include the unconscious mental processes. If not, they're still playing in the background, forming opinions to things, right? About, oh, well, this position I'm in is either pleasant, unpleasant, or I'm indifferent to it, or the temperature of the room, or the noise level, or whatever it is. See, and this is what frustrates people who meditate, and they can't get past this. I know people have been meditating for 30, 40 years, and they still can't get past this. Why? Because they didn't establish a successful foundation in mindfulness beforehand, allowing them to disengage from these unconscious mental processes. And as I've stated before, the Breath Bridge program that I've developed is a way to help you start to do that, through first hyper-engaging and then disengaging from the physical senses. Without this external sensory input, the unconscious processes of the mind are then calmed, and they're not getting anything that's going to trigger them, and it allows us to then become more still. But we still need to have observed and experienced these processes and learned how to let them go, either dissolve them or do something to alter them in some way through a practice. Meditation is not when we do those sorts of things. Those are meditative practices, right? So what we want to understand is this. In order to attain no mind, we must not only quiet our conscious thoughts, but also all of our unconscious thought processes. We must be able to suspend or even overcome conscious thought as well as unconscious thought. Now remember, we don't realize that the unconscious things are happening. Why? Because we are unconscious of them, right? Makes sense, huh? All thoughts in the conscious mind and unconscious mind need to be brought to stillness, as do all of our intentions. As does the sense of self. The sense of self must have been dissolved. By this I mean that the ego has been allowed to die. The ego serves a purpose when we are young. But once we are an adult, it no longer serves the purpose. It is not a part of our mind that we need to coddle and hold and value, which is becoming more and more popular in this pseudo-spiritual stuff coming out. That is being perpetuated to the public as a way to prevent them from awakening. It's going to prevent them from ever becoming mindful, and it will help them dwell in their ego. It will keep them enslaved by the ego, their mind dominated by the ego. So I caution you against this, and it may seem appealing to you when you first come across it because it's the easy way out. Oh, wait a minute, maybe everybody's wrong. Maybe my ego is great. Maybe I do need to have that. It's a part of me, so I should love it, right? The twisted liberal emotional logic that's rampant today. This is where it's coming from. This is what it supports. It's not real. Don't be fooled by it. If we are going to reclaim control of our mind and then move beyond the mind, the ego must die. That is just the way it is. And for those who are incapable of processing such a thing, right? We see those people around. I'm sure it's not any of you listening, but I'm sure you've witnessed it, right? Those people that, oh, he said the ego must die. That's a part of me, and I can't kill a part of me. I need a safe space, right? I have to go get my coloring book and crayons and curl up in a blankie and cover my ears so I don't have to hear such things. Well, then real spirituality is probably not for them. But if we look at this, right, we can see how this immature nature, right, all this fear, all this immaturity, all the slave to the emotions, do you understand? That is the ego that has attained an unsustainable level. It is the ego that is fearful. It is the ego that is incredibly infantile. This is why grown adults act this way, because their mind has been completely dominated by the ego. And not only are they selfish and immature and incapable of accepting reality, but they have to hide from it. And this is very disturbing. It's very sad. It's heartbreaking to see good people succumb to this. Meditation allows us to keep our mind strong. The practice of mindfulness is the antidote to this sort of behavior. So yes, the ego must be overcome. It must die. The false self must dissolve away in order that our true self can shine through once again. I also found it interesting the other day when a friend made the comment that, well, in order to lose the ego, you first have to develop an ego. And kind of insinuating that not everybody develops an ego. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. If you have a mind, if you are growing up, you are developing an ego. Right? It's part of the process. This happens in every human being when they're in the age of 6, 7, or 8, right in there. That's where it goes through. And it's meant to keep us safe. It serves a purpose in the beginning. It keeps us from being stupid and harming ourselves, right, as we get into those teenage years and things like that. But then once we reach a certain point, sometimes it used to be around 13 or 14, but now with the increase of the ego and the immaturity level of people, it's more between 18 and 40, right? That you no longer need the ego. And when that happens, it's time to get rid of it. Many ancient cultures had a rite of passage practice that would be ceremoniously given when people reached a certain age in order to help them overcome the ego. Unfortunately, we don't do that anymore, and we can see the results. But there is no way around forming an ego, and every mind has it happen. So, yes, we form an ego, and therefore we have to overcome the ego. And my wife and I were watching a video clip a friend posted of a small baby, right? Just a little tiny dude, just barely walking, and they put him in front of a store mirror, right? A big, massive mirror in this department store. And the little baby is standing there looking at himself in the mirror. And then he toddles over behind the mirror and he looks behind the mirror for the child. And he comes back and he looks again and he goes back and looks behind the mirror and he can't figure out where the little kid goes. Where does this other kid go? See, he doesn't identify with the image in the mirror because he hasn't yet formed an ego. He's only, 9 months old or a year old. I don't know how old he was, but he was that young. Well, the ego hasn't started to form yet. So there's no sense of separation of self. So that's why he doesn't identify with that image in the mirror as something separate from everyone else. Right? We can observe this in natural human behavior. Now, around 6 or 7, that's going to change. and he'll know exactly who's in that mirror and begin forming opinions about the image in the mirror. And then as they continue to get older, then, right, they can't pass a mirror without stopping and primping, right? A teenager or whatever, young adults, they got to stand in front of the mirror and they primp. See, this is the development of the ego. And then what we have to do, because that naturally happens, is then we have to have some sort of mechanism in place that will allow us to get rid of it when we no longer need it. It's done its duty. It's kept us safe when we needed to stay safe. It allowed us to grow into a more mature adult. Now it needs to be shed. I find it quite surprising at how many people think that, oh, well, I'm a good person, people like me, or I'm a very religious person, and I'm so kind and thoughtful, I don't have any ego. And these people are nice. They're great-hearted people. They're kind people. They're loving people. But they still are dominated by the ego. The ego is still there. The unconscious mental processes are still active. All this stuff is still there. See, it's the ego that denies it. It's the ego that's telling them they're such a good person that they don't have any ego. But in reality, they do. See, oftentimes people associate being egotistical in a very negative way, self-centered and selfish and uncaring and all this stuff as the ego. Sure, that's an extreme negative manifestation of it, but that doesn't mean that somebody that's nice and kind and gentle still doesn't have the ego, that still isn't controlled by the ego, because they certainly are. It's just a normal part of the mind. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's just an unnecessary part of the mind that we need to get rid of in order to become an even better person, in order to become awakened. You cannot awaken, nor can you attain mindfulness when you are still of ego. Only when we're capable of overcoming the ego, suspending all conscious and unconscious mental chatter and processes and patterns and intentions, only then will our meditation no longer be a struggle, but instead a fruitful endeavor that allows us to step on the path of awakening and towards living a fully engaged life. I'd like to thank everyone who is buying my book, Expansion Mastery, as well as my programs. I had several orders the other day that I sent out, and when I sent them all out, I upgraded everyone's shipping from standard media mail, which takes a week to 2 weeks, to priority mail, which takes 2 to 3 days. And there was no charge added to you. I did that as my gift so that you can get this material more quickly. I hope you enjoy that. And again, I thank everyone who continues to order and support the effort to perpetuate this consciousness shift forward. I applaud you and I appreciate you. And please make sure to visit me at www.expansionmastery.com. You can get the book and all of my programs there. Also give us the likes and subscribes and all that other social media stuff that is so necessary these days. And most of all, make sure you are sharing these podcasts with people that you love, people that you care about, friends, family, anyone. Make sure you're getting this out in the world. We can't allow this fake spirituality to take over. We need to work together to help everyone in the world awaken. We need to help this mass awakening. So together we can do that. And I'm asking for your help in that, so please do what you can. Make sure you're sharing this podcast, supporting it, subscribing to the YouTube channel and things, so that together we can help others awaken and enjoy a fully engaged life. Until next week, my friends, I wish you the very best in your practices and in your life. Take care.